Hi, I'm Siddharth Rego, and welcome to the Expert Lounge, a podcast brought to you by India Ratings and Research, a Fitch Group company. And today we're talking about the real estate sector. So if you're interested, do stay tuned because I have with me Aparna Chaughule, Associate Director at India Ratings, and she heads the real estate segment. Aparna, welcome to the Expert Lounge.
Thanks, Siddharth, for inviting me.
For those of you who don't know, Aparna heads the real estate sector within India Ratings. So, Aparna, let's just deep dive into today's topic.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, before we get into the specifics, if you can just provide some context, Aparna, what has happened across the, let's say, the last 2 years, and as a result of that, where does the sector stand as on date?
Correct. So, Siddharth, it's very interesting to note that post the advent of pandemic,
Okay.
residential real estate segment was one of the first sectors to bounce back, and that
Right.
too after a long-standing slump of over last 7 to 8 years. Okay, this strong turnaround in the residential real estate segment
Yeah.
was witnessed immediately after the lockdown was lifted.
Okay. Immediately.
Right. Yeah. So one of the strong reasons that we can relate to this upcycle in demand is mainly because people have realized the benefit associated with home ownership,
Right.
especially during this pandemic. There was already this pent up demand which was building over the last 7 to 8 years, mainly because there was a trust deficit amongst of the customers for the developers fraternity.
Okay.
Right, but with the introduction of RERA and demonetization, there was a lot of regulation that came in into this sector and which helped revive the customer confidence.
Interesting.
Right, so all this pent up demand started to get translated into actual sales.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Which was again further pushed by the pandemic because people wanted to have their own homes, which is what they realized during this pandemic times.
So,
Right. So this was one of the important reasons that we see that the demand momentum has picked up to this extent.
interesting, Aparna. And what about the last 2 quarters? Let's say from January to June. What's happened during this period? What's been the performance?
Right. So talking about the performance that we have seen over the last 2 quarters is one of the best, which has panned out after a very long time, especially in the March quarter and the June quarter, the last 2 quarters that went by. So I have some numbers before me that
Right.
tell you about them. So the housing sales in Mumbai,
Yeah.
that it rose by around 55% in the last
55%. Okay.
Yes, yes. And which then in Bangalore had one of the highest growth. It was 80%.
Okay.
Delhi NCR also had a twofold jump. Pune witnessed 25% rise. Hyderabad saw 23% growth.
Right.
Chennai rose by 21%, and Kolkata also witnessed 39% rise in sales
So
over
it's been
the corresponding period.
been across the markets.
Across all the prime residential markets of India. Right.
Interesting, Aparna.
Right. And again, another point that I would like to bring out here, Siddharth, is that this has increase in sales across various customer segments.
Okay.
Right. So the affordable has been the maximum or the largest contributor to the demand home sales so far. But we could see a huge improvement or growth or revival in the upper middle and the premium segment over the last 1 year, last fiscal FY22, as well as in the last quarter of the current year. Okay. Right. So what does this hint? This hints that there's a change in the customer preference.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
So because wherein they are now looking for better homes, larger homes with good amenities, as well as and also it also shows that the customer has a purchasing power, right? So the purchasing power of the customer is also improving. That is why they are preferring a better and
Exactly.
Bigger homes.
Exactly.
Right.
I think the thing which I picked up most from what you said is the fact that this demand is rising.
Exactly.
I think you've spoken about a few pointers which are supporting this demand, but if you could get into the specifics, what are the key drivers which is providing a thrust to the demand within the residential real estate sector?
Right. So we just spoke about the pent up demand, the consumer positive customer sentiments for home ownership.
Correct.
A better prepared developer ecosystem. So these are some of the factors which actually paved way for a stronger performance of this sector. over the last few months.
Interesting.
But there are also other factors such as affordability because of the low interest regime. Currently
Yeah.
these stable prices which were there earlier, the fiscal stimulus that was offered. So which actually prompted the customers or the home buyers to advance their purchases.
Okay.
Okay, so this all resulted in a very strong performance in the last couple of quarters.
Right. I think earlier you mentioned you covered the growth in sales across all the various geographies. But how about it from a demographic standpoint? Has there been a shift or a structural change within this?
Yes, so this is one of the very important point that have come up. The demographic shift in the demographic, favorable shift in the demographics of the customers.
Right.
So basically, if you look historically, we have been seeing that the customers were looking to buy houses, wherein the age group of say 35 to 40, 40 years or 40,
Okay.
45 years. But right now, the customers, are coming forward to buy houses. It starts right at the age of 25.
Okay, so complete shift.
Yes. So this is a huge, volume that is getting added to the customer base for homes. Again, we see entry of female customers. Earlier,
Yeah.
traditionally, it has been the male customers. So we see the entry of female customers who are looking forward to buy homes, buy and move.
Yes.
So that is
Yes.
another point. Then of course, we always talk about this ever increasing earning millennial population, that we have here,
True.
right?
So true.
Which is getting it's added each year,
Yeah.
right? There's increase in the hiring activity which we saw, which happened over the last, especially in the technology-based sectors. And there has been good hike in the salaries and disposable income that the
Correct.
customer has.
Correct.
So all these factors, are adding to the demand momentum that we are talking about, and it will keep, the demand momentum on even going forward.
Yeah, I think we've spoken quite a fair bit about the demand supply fundamentals, the key structural shifts which have been there. But let's move on to a trending topic, which is the interest rates.
Yes.
Interest rates are just spiking up.
Right.
How are you seeing this impacting affordability, and would this impact the demand for real estate?
So this is actually, as you mentioned, the burning point of happen and may affect the affordability going forward. So we have seen an all-time best low interest regime.
Yeah.
Right, for the and some of the and which was one of the primary factor which was driving home sales.
Yeah.
But that's not the only factor which is driving home sales. We need to
Oh,
understand,
is it?
right?
Okay.
So there are other things also. So we see this market is an end user driven market. It's
Right.
not a speculative market anymore, as it was in the pre-RERA times.
Very true.
Right, home loans have remained largely affordable.
Yeah.
Right, the low interest is an important part and a big booster to the housing demand. But the increased importance of owning a property,
All right.
right, has further backed the customers, and the overall economic scenario and the impending income stability is also helping the demand to grow.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Right, Aparna. So typically, you see when interest rates are rising, normally the loan tenor kind of gets extended rather than the EMI amount increasing. Do you think this statement holds true, or would this change?
This is a very fair and correct statement that you made.
Yeah.
Because even the bankers or everybody tries to help and adjust the customer.
Yeah.
So that they can take care of that, because they have their own family budget.
Correct.
Right, so that is also important.
Yes.
So one of the ways of adjusting this increase in the interest rate is by increasing the tenor rather than increasing the EMI amount.
Correct.
Okay, so yes, that's a very fair point, and this will definitely help the customer to go ahead with their purchase decisions.
Right.
Maybe it does include the overall acquisition cost, but it will not increase its immediate burden.
Yeah.
The monthly outgo of the customer. So that will definitely play a big role in continuing, in which will help the customer to go ahead with this buying decision.
Yeah. So this is the interest rate part of it. What about the increasing construction cost? Yeah, construction costs have been increasing. Would this result in a change in the pricing?
Yes, of course. So the developer, it's inevitable, right?
Right.
The customer, the increase in the price rise is going to happen, and it has already happened.
Yeah.
In the last year, or
Yeah.
even in the last quarter, we have
Okay.
seen that. the property prices across all residential markets have firmed up.
Right.
Okay, and we could see that has happened in a couple of rounds. So earlier, after a prolonged period of stagnation, and correction that we saw till the year 2021,
Yeah.
there were a couple of round of hikes, as I told you. Initially, at the beginning of the year, when the demand started picking up, the prices were more or less stable because the developers were looking at liquidating their inventory because
Right.
which they were holding on to for a very long time.
Correct.
So they did not want to impact the affordability.
Yeah.
But as the the inventory started to get exhausted, we saw first round of increase in the prices, which was in the range of 6 to 8% pan India.
Right.
Okay. Later in the last 3 to 6 months, what has happened is there has been increase in the commodity prices because of
Exactly.
geopolitical tensions and everything.
Correct.
So there was another round of increase of in the range of 3 to 9% across various micro
Correct.
markets,
Okay.
which was done to pass on this particular prices to the customer. Because if the project is at a very advanced stage, maybe there is not much impact on the developer's margin. But
Exactly.
the projects which are recently launched or on the some in the nascent state or beginning stage
Correct.
of construction, the increase in prices will affect the margin of the developer, and it is obvious that we will pass it down to the customers. But if you ask me, has the market been able to absorb this particular price rise? So yes, this particular increase was anticipated, and it was already built into the market sentiments, and so far we saw that the market has absorbed this price rise that has happened.
Yeah. What would happen if, let's say, costing increases or the interest rates increase further? Would this impact demand in the future?
The price rise and the interest rise in the interest rate was inevitable, like I already mentioned. And given that the current demand is more of end user driven and not a speculative one, the market may take time to absorb it. It will take time to settle it, but it will bounce back. Because the demand is there, and as long as the developer provides a value proposition to the customer, the market may take us time to settle, but it's definitely going to bounce back.
Right, Aparna.
So the growth that we have seen, which has been a vertical linear growth over the last, it may not continue to be a vertical linear growth. It may be non-linear, but yes, the demand momentum is expected to continue over the near and medium term.
Right, Aparna. No, thanks, Aparna. I think there's been a lot of things which I've learned and discussed during this. I think I picked up a few key takeaways, should I say. One was the fact that any further steep interest rate hike or an increase in the housing prices could result, let's say, in a marginal push out in demand over the near term. But broadly, if you have to look at it, the demand momentum is likely to remain strong and could continue.
Yes.
Right, Aparna. Well, that's all we have in this episode of the Expert Lounge. I hope you found it useful. Do stay tuned to it. It's a podcast brought to you by India Ratings and Research, a Fitch Group company, because ultimately, for opinions on risk and credit, India comes to us.